Good evening, and welcome back to Shadow Storyteller. If you enjoy true horror stories to listen to before sleep, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment below. Your support helps this channel grow, and it tells me which stories keep you awake the longest. Now listen closely. Because some legends refuse to stay buried. Some creatures do not fade with time. And in one quiet corner of rural America, something is still watching the tree line, waiting to be seen again. Long after midnight, when the woods fall silent and even the insects stop singing, the people of southern Arkansas still lock their doors a little tighter. Not because of crime. Not because of strangers. But because of something that walks upright, breathes heavily, and leaves footprints that no human boot can explain. This is the true story of the Fouke monster. And why, even today, its sightings remain unexplained. The town of Fouke rests near the border of Arkansas and Texas, surrounded by dense pine forests, muddy creeks, and miles of unbroken wilderness. In the late summer of 1971, the air in Fouke felt heavier than usual. Nights were humid, thick with fog, and the moon often disappeared behind low-hanging clouds. It was the kind of place where sound traveled far, yet answers never did. One evening in early May, just after 11:30 at night, a local man named Alton Greaves stepped onto his back porch to let his hound inside. Alton was a quiet mill worker, known for never exaggerating a story. As he opened the screen door, a smell hit him first. Wet earth, rusted metal, and something sharp, like animal sweat left too long in the sun. Then he heard the breathing. It came from beyond the tree line, slow and deep, with a rasp that sounded almost painful. Alton froze. His hound lowered its ears and whimpered, refusing to move. When Alton lifted his porch light, the beam cut through the fog just enough to reveal a tall shape near the edge of the woods. It stood taller than the fence. Its shoulders were broad. Its body was covered in dark, matted hair that glistened with moisture. When it moved, branches snapped like dry bones. Alton ran inside and locked every door. By the time the sheriff arrived, the creature was gone. But something else remained. 3 deep footprints pressed into the mud, longer than a man's foot, wider than a bear's paw. Word spread fast. Within weeks, reports flooded in. A young couple, Merritt Cole and Nadine Holloway, claimed the creature attacked their car late one night while they were parked near Boggy Creek. According to Nadine, it struck the side of the vehicle with such force that the metal dented inward. She remembered the sound most of all. A hollow, booming thud, followed by a scream that did not sound human, yet did not sound like any animal she had ever heard. Another witness, a retired farmer named Ellery Boone, swore he saw the monster crossing a dirt road just before dawn. The fog was thin, the light pale and blue. Ellery said the creature turned its head and looked directly at him. He described eyes set deep beneath a heavy brow, reflecting light like glass. What terrified him most was not its size. It was the intelligence behind the stare. Law enforcement attempted to calm the town. Some blamed bears. Others suggested a prank. But no bear walks on 2 legs for that long. No prank leaves claw marks carved into tree trunks 8 feet above the ground. As summer turned to fall, the sightings did not stop. They increased. Livestock were found dead, not eaten, but torn apart. Chickens vanished from locked coops. Dogs refused to go outside after dark. Children reported hearing footsteps circling their homes at night, slow and deliberate, never approaching the door, never leaving tracks by morning. Then came the scream. Multiple witnesses described it the same way. A long, rising howl that started low and ended in a sharp, piercing cry. It echoed through the woods, bounced off the water, and lingered in the air long after it stopped. Some locals began to believe the creature was not just passing through. It lived there. And it had for a very long time. Search parties were formed. Armed men walked deep into the forest, calling out, firing warning shots, trying to scare whatever it was into revealing itself. They found nothing. No nest. No body. No bones. Only more footprints, appearing where no path existed, then stopping abruptly as if the creature simply vanished. By the time winter arrived, fear had settled into Fouke like frost. Doors stayed locked. Windows stayed shut. People avoided the woods. And yet, every so often, someone would still hear that breathing outside their home, slow and patient, as if whatever was out there knew exactly who was inside. Years passed. The headlines faded. Skeptics laughed. But the stories never stopped. Even decades later, hunters reported strange encounters. Campers described being watched from the darkness. One truck driver, traveling alone near midnight, claimed something ran alongside his vehicle for several seconds before disappearing into the trees, keeping pace without effort. What makes the Fouke monster different from other legends is not just the number of witnesses. It is the consistency. The same height. The same smell. The same sound. Across generations. No remains have ever been found. No clear photograph has ever been taken. And no explanation has ever satisfied those who live there. Some say the creature learned to avoid people. Others believe it only appears when it wants to be seen. A warning, perhaps. Or a reminder. Because in Fouke, the woods are older than the town. And not everything that lives there wants to be understood. Even now, if you drive those back roads late at night, you may notice how quiet it becomes. How the air feels thick. How your headlights seem too weak for the darkness ahead. And if you hear heavy breathing just beyond the reach of your light, do not stop. Do not look too long. Some mysteries survive because they are meant to, and some monsters never leave. As the years continued to pass, the people of Fouke learned an unspoken rule. You could talk about the Fouke monster during the day, under the sun, with laughter nearby. But once night fell, once the cicadas began their steady chorus and the woods turned into a single dark mass, the name was spoken less and less. Not out of superstition. Out of instinct. Because even those who claimed not to believe would pause when the forest went silent. In the early spring of 1983, a man named Thaddeus Rowe returned to Fouke after decades away. He had grown up there, left for work, raised a family elsewhere, and came back only to settle his late father's property. Thaddeus considered himself practical, educated, immune to old legends. He arrived with skepticism and left with something very different. On his third night back, he stayed late in the old house, sorting through boxes by the dim glow of a single lamp. Just after 1 in the morning, the power flickered. The lamp dimmed, then steadied. That was when he noticed the smell. Damp, earthy, familiar in a way he could not immediately place. Then came the sound. Not a footstep. Not a knock. But the weight of something leaning against the outside wall. The boards creaked slowly, deliberately, as if testing their strength. Thaddeus stood still, heart pounding, listening to the breathing on the other side of the wall. It was close enough that he could hear the rhythm. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Calm. Controlled. He later said that what terrified him most was the patience. When the sound finally moved away, it did not retreat quickly. It circled the house once, dragging something heavy through the grass, before disappearing into the trees. At sunrise, Thaddeus found the grass flattened, pressed into a wide arc around the home. No footprints. No marks. Just the unmistakable sign that something large had been there. He sold the property within the month. Stories like Thaddeus's never reached the news. They traveled quietly, passed between neighbors, shared in low voices over coffee or at the edge of church parking lots. Each retelling carried the same undercurrent. Whatever the Fouke monster was, it was not gone. It was simply careful. Some locals began to suggest that the creature understood human behavior better than expected. It avoided crowds. It avoided weapons. It appeared when people were alone or distracted. When attention drifted. When confidence replaced caution. A retired wildlife officer named Clayton Voss once admitted that during his years patrolling the region, he encountered signs that did not match any known animal. Trees bent inward at odd angles. Scratches too high. Trails disturbed without any clear entry or exit point. Clayton stopped short of calling it a monster. He called it a presence. According to him, the forest around Fouke felt different at night. Not threatening. Watchful. As if something was always aware of where you stood. He described moments when he would pause, sensing that if he took one more step forward, something would respond. So he learned not to. The most unsettling detail across all accounts is how rarely the Fouke monster is described as aggressive. It frightens, it startles, it intimidates. But it does not pursue. It does not attack directly. Almost as if fear itself is enough. Almost as if being seen is the point. In recent years, with the rise of trail cameras and drones, many expected the mystery to finally be solved. But technology brought no clarity. Cameras malfunctioned. Batteries drained unexpectedly. Footage glitched at critical moments. Shapes appeared at the edge of frames, only to vanish upon review. Those who reviewed the footage often felt an unease they could not explain. A sense that something had allowed itself to be recorded, just briefly, before slipping away again. One camper uploaded a short clip taken near Boggy Creek. The video showed nothing unusual at first. Just trees, fog, moonlight. But halfway through, the audio picked up a low sound. A breath. Close to the microphone. Too close to be coincidence. The camper deleted the video within hours. When asked why, he said he could not sleep after hearing it again. He said the sound followed him, lingering in his thoughts long after the clip ended. As if it recognized him. As if it remembered. That idea appears again and again in folk monster stories. Recognition. The sense that once you encounter it, even indirectly, something shifts. You become aware of the forest in a new way. You notice how easily sound disappears. How darkness seems to absorb distance. You stop assuming you are alone. Some residents believe the folk monster is tied to the land itself. A guardian. A remnant. A reminder of what existed before roads and fences. Others believe it is something far older, something that learned to adapt as humans expanded around it. Whatever the truth, one thing remains consistent. The creature has never been proven false. And it has never been proven real. It exists in the space between certainty and doubt, where the human mind is most vulnerable. Where imagination and memory blend. Where stories do not need evidence to survive. Tonight, as this story draws closer to its end, it may feel like you have reached a safe distance. That the mystery remains out there, far from you, deep in the woods of southern Arkansas. That is what many believed. Until they heard heavy breathing where no forest stood. Until they noticed footprints where no mud lay. Until they felt watched in places where nothing should be watching. Because the folk monster is not defined by location. It is defined by encounter. And once you understand that something can exist without explanation, once you accept that not everything needs to be understood to be real, the story does not end when the words stop. It waits. Patiently. Just beyond the edge of certainty. And if you ever find yourself driving a quiet road late at night, if your headlights cut through fog that seems too thick, too still, remember what the people of folk have known for generations. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved. They are meant to be noticed. And once noticed, they never truly leave. What few outsiders ever understand is that the folk monster does not announce itself with spectacle. It does not chase cars for miles or roar from the treetops. Its presence is quieter than that, and far more unsettling. It enters the edges of awareness first, long before it ever steps into view. That is how most people encounter it. They feel it before they see it. In the late autumn of 1997, a volunteer firefighter named Reuben Hale was driving home after a late call. The road cut through a stretch of forest locals avoided after dark. The night was clear, the moon thin and sharp like a blade. Reuben had driven that road hundreds of times, but that night something felt off. The radio lost its signal. The air grew unnaturally still. And his headlights seemed weaker than usual, as if swallowed by the darkness ahead. Then he noticed movement. Not crossing the road. Not running. Keeping pace. Something tall moved just beyond the reach of the headlights, matching the speed of his truck with long, effortless strides. Reuben refused to look directly at it. He later said he knew, instinctively, that doing so would change something he could never change back. The smell reached him next. Wet fur. Rotting leaves. Old water. His engine began to sputter. For several seconds that felt far longer, the truck slowed while the shape beside him did not. When the engine finally caught again, the presence drifted backward into the trees, vanishing without sound. Reuben never drove that road again. He told only his wife, and only once. What followed were years of scattered reports, each one dismissed individually, never connected publicly. A hunter finding his campsite disturbed without tracks. A fisherman hearing breathing from the reeds while standing ankle-deep in water. A group of teenagers swearing something watched them from across a clearing, silent and motionless, until they left. The common thread was restraint. The folk monster never needed to cross the final distance. Some researchers believe this restraint is the key to its survival. It avoids capture by avoiding confrontation. It lets fear do the work. It leaves impressions instead of evidence. Memories instead of proof. And memories are difficult to challenge. Those who grow up near Falk often develop habits they cannot explain. They avoid certain paths. They leave the woods earlier than planned. They trust sudden feelings of unease without questioning them. Visitors notice this instinct quickly. They ask why locals glance toward the trees so often. Why conversations lower at night? Why children are called inside long before sunset? The answer is never given directly. Because how do you explain a presence that does not want to be explained? One of the most disturbing accounts surfaced quietly online years later, buried in a forum thread that disappeared within days. A user claiming to be a land surveyor described spending a week mapping property lines near Boggy Creek. Each night, his equipment malfunctioned. Batteries drained. Compasses spun. On the final night, he woke to the sound of slow breathing outside his tent. He did not open it. He lay still, counting each breath, until the sound moved away. When he checked the area at dawn, he found the ground pressed flat around the tent, as if something had crouched there for hours, watching. He never returned to finish the job. What frightens people most is not the idea of a creature hiding in the woods. It is the idea of a creature that understands boundaries. That chooses not to cross them. That knows when it has already achieved its purpose. Fear is not always loud. Sometimes it is patient. Sometimes it waits until you doubt yourself more than the darkness. The Falk monster has endured because it does not need witnesses. It needs uncertainty. It thrives in the gap between what you see and what you feel. Between what you can prove and what you cannot forget. As this story stretches on, you may notice something subtle happening. A heightened awareness of sound. A sensitivity to silence. The way your attention shifts when the room grows quiet. That reaction is not coincidence. Stories like this work slowly. They plant ideas instead of images. They linger quietly, resurfacing when the environment feels just right. Late at night. Alone. When familiar spaces feel slightly unfamiliar. That is when many people remember the Falk monster without meaning to. They think of the breathing. The footprints. The patience. They wonder, briefly, if something like that could exist closer than they realize. And then they tell themselves no. That dismissal is comforting. But comfort has never been proof. The woods around Falk are still there. The creeks still flow. The trees still bend under unseen weight. And every so often, someone still smells damp fur where no animal should be. No final photograph has ever closed the case. No confession has ever solved it. No explanation has ever erased it. The Falk monster remains exactly where it has always been. Between belief and denial. Waiting for the next moment when someone looks into the dark and feels, unmistakably, that they are not alone. And when that moment comes, when the silence deepens and the forest seems to lean inward, the truth becomes clear in a way no evidence ever could. Some legends survive because they are entertaining. Others survive because they are careful. And some survive because, somewhere out there, something is still breathing. Slow. Steady. Just beyond the reach of the light. As the nights stretch longer and the forests grow denser with shadow, the story of the Falk monster does not fade. It settles. It becomes part of the landscape, like the creeks that cut through the land or the fog that rises without warning. People who live nearby do not search for it. They live around it. That distinction matters. Those who hunt legends often expect confrontation. They expect proof to appear when challenged. But the Falk monster has never responded to pursuit. It reveals itself only in moments of quiet certainty, when someone believes they are alone and safe enough to stop paying attention. In the early winter of 2005, during a season marked by heavy rainfall, a woman named Maribel Quince was driving home from a late shift at a medical supply warehouse. The route she took was narrow and rarely used at night. Water pooled along the road, reflecting the dull glow of her headlights. As she slowed near a bend, she saw something standing motionless at the edge of the trees. At first, she thought it was a broken fence post. Then she noticed the shape was breathing. Maribel stopped her car without realizing it. The engine idled. The air inside felt thick, damp, and cold. The shape did not move closer. It did not retreat. It simply stood there, tall and dark, as if it had been waiting for her to arrive at that exact moment. She later described the eyes as reflective, but not glowing. A dull shine, like wet stone catching moonlight. After several seconds, which felt much longer than seconds should feel, the figure turned its head away from her and stepped back into the trees. Branches parted without sound. The forest closed behind it. Maribel drove home shaking and did not speak of it for years. When she finally did, she said something that unsettled everyone who listened. She said the encounter did not feel like an accident. It felt like a decision. As if whatever stood there had noticed her approach, considered it, and chosen not to advance. That sense of being evaluated appears again and again in Fouke monster encounters. Not hunted. Not threatened. Judged. Some anthropologists who have studied folklore in the region suggest that the creature occupies a role once held by older myths. A boundary keeper. A reminder. Something that reinforces respect for places humans do not fully control. Others argue that the Fouke monster represents something far more literal. A surviving species. Intelligent. Elusive. Perfectly adapted to avoid detection while remaining present. Neither explanation brings comfort. Because both suggest intention. As technology advanced, more people arrived hoping to document the creature. Night vision cameras. Audio recorders. Motion sensors. Most left frustrated. A few left shaken. One audio technician, whose recordings were later shared privately among researchers, captured something unusual late one night near Boggy Creek. The file contained hours of ambient forest sound. Insects. Wind. Distant water. And then, very close to the microphone, a slow exhale. The sound was not sudden. It did not startle. It emerged gradually, as if the source had leaned closer over time. When played back at normal speed, it sounded almost peaceful. When slowed down, the breath revealed texture. Weight. Presence. The technician refused to return to the site. When asked why, he said he felt foolish admitting it. He said the sound made him feel recognized. As if something knew he was listening and allowed itself to be heard. That idea unsettles people more than the notion of a monster lurking in the woods. Recognition implies awareness. Awareness implies memory. Memory implies choice. The Fouke monster does not appear randomly. It appears selectively. That selectivity is why some people live their entire lives near Fouke without ever encountering anything unusual, while others experience moments they never forget. It is why the story refuses to be resolved. There is nothing to capture. Nothing to chase. Nothing to defeat. Only something that remains. As this account continues, you may feel the tension shifting. Less about what the creature is, and more about how it behaves. Less about evidence, and more about experience. That shift mirrors what happens to those who live near the legend long enough. At first, they want answers. Later, they only want distance. They learn to trust certain feelings. A sudden urge to leave an area. A heaviness in the air. The way sound seems to flatten when something is wrong. Those instincts keep people safe. Those who ignore them often become stories themselves. There are rumors of individuals who followed the creature too closely. Who attempted to provoke it. Who believed courage meant pushing forward when fear suggested retreat. Their experiences are rarely shared in detail. Not because they are too unbelievable. Because they are too quiet. One such rumor involves a pair of amateur filmmakers who arrived with cameras and confidence, determined to expose the truth. They camped deep in the forest and recorded through the night. Their footage was later reviewed by family members after the pair returned early, shaken and unwilling to speak. The cameras captured nothing dramatic. No figure. No attack. Only hours of darkness. And near the end, the sound of two people whispering urgently, trying to understand why the forest had gone completely silent. Then a third breath joined the recording. Not theirs. Closer than it should have been. The filmmakers never released the footage publicly. They never returned to Fouke. Stories like these do not explode into headlines. They settle into the collective memory of the region. They shape behavior. They reinforce caution. And slowly, over time, they change the way people see the darkness. The Fouke monster does not need belief to exist. It only needs space. Space to move unseen. Space to watch. Space to remain exactly where it is. And as long as the forests stand, as long as the creeks flow quietly under moonlight, that space will remain. Waiting. For the next moment when someone pauses on a lonely road, feels the air grow heavy, and realizes, with a certainty they cannot explain, that something has noticed them. That moment does not come with sound. It comes with stillness. And once it arrives, the story is no longer just something you heard. It becomes something you carry. Quietly. carefully, like the people of Fouke always have. Time has a strange way of bending around places like Fouke. Years pass on calendars, but the forest does not seem to notice. The same trees stand where they always have. The same water moves through the same channels. And the same silence returns night after night, thick enough to feel. People who leave often think the stories will loosen their grip with distance. Most are wrong. They find themselves waking in unfamiliar cities, heart racing, convinced they heard breathing in the dark. They hesitate before stepping into wooded parks hundreds of miles away. They glance toward shadows that do not deserve attention, and yet demand it. Something learned in Fouke does not unlearn easily. In the summer of 2011, a freight conductor named Lowell Mercer passed through southern Arkansas regularly. He was not from the area and knew little of its legends. His work kept him moving at night, guiding slow, heavy trains through stretches of land that felt untouched by time. One night, as his train slowed near a wooded crossing outside town limits, Lowell noticed something standing beside the tracks. Tall, motionless, watching the train pass with an attention that felt deliberate. He assumed it was a man at first. Then he noticed the proportions were wrong. The arms hung too long. The shoulders sat too high. And the head did not turn as the train moved, but stayed fixed on the engine until it passed completely. Lowell felt a pressure in his chest he could not explain. He did not wave. He did not slow further. He kept his eyes forward and told himself it was nothing. When he looked back through the side mirror, the figure was gone. Later, reviewing his route map, he realized that stretch of track had no foot access for miles. No road. No path. Nothing that explained how anyone could have been standing there. Lowell never spoke of the incident publicly, but he altered his schedule whenever possible to avoid night runs through that region. He said it felt like being acknowledged. That is the word many eventually choose. Not threatened. Not attacked. Acknowledged. The Fouke monster does not behave like a predator. It behaves like a constant. It appears to know when it is being observed and when it is not. It understands when it has been noticed, and when it has not. That awareness unsettles people more than any display of strength ever could. Because awareness implies intention. Over the years, patterns emerge when accounts are compared quietly. The creature appears more often near water. It favors transition spaces. Tree lines. Creek beds. Roads that divide forest from open land. It does not enter houses. It approaches them. That distinction has saved more than one person. A woman named Eloan Price, who moved into a rental property near Boggy Creek for a short-term teaching position, experienced this distinction firsthand. One night, unable to sleep, she sat near a window watching the yard under pale moonlight. That was when she saw movement near the fence. Something large paced slowly along the boundary of the property, never crossing it. Each step was measured. Each pause intentional. It moved as if testing an invisible line it refused to cross. Eloan stayed frozen until dawn. When morning came, she found the grass flattened along the fence line. The posts themselves were warm to the touch, despite the cool air. She requested a transfer the following week. What troubles people most is not that the Fouke monster exists, but that it seems to respect rules no one taught it. Boundaries. Distance. Timing. It appears when fear is enough. There is an old belief among locals that the creature does not want to be chased, filmed, or proven. It wants to be remembered. That remembrance keeps people cautious. Keeps them from wandering too far, too confidently, into places that are not theirs. Whether that belief is truth or comfort is impossible to say. But it persists. In recent winters, fewer sightings have been reported publicly. Some interpret this as a sign the creature is gone. Others see it as proof of the opposite. The fewer stories told aloud, the more remain unspoken. Silence protects things. The forest has grown quieter over time, not louder. Fewer insects at night. Fewer birds at dawn. Some biologists attribute this to environmental changes. Others, quietly, are not so sure. Because silence, too, can be a response. The Fouke monster has never needed noise to announce itself. It does not roar. It does not crash through trees. It lets the world around it adjust instead. Animals avoid certain areas without explanation. Hunters feel watched before seeing anything. Campers pack up suddenly, unable to justify the urgency they feel. The creature does not chase them. It does not have to. As you listen to this story now, there may be a moment when you notice your surroundings more closely. A pause between sounds. A stretch of quiet that feels heavier than it should. That reaction is familiar to those who know the legend well. It is the moment awareness shifts. Because the Fouke monster is not confined to a single place or time. It exists wherever wild spaces press against human certainty. Wherever darkness remains deep enough to hold secrets. It is not everywhere. But it is not nowhere. And the reason the mystery has never been solved is simple. Those who encounter it do not come back eager to explain. They come back eager to forget, and unable to. The story continues not because people seek it out, but because it finds them. On lonely roads. Beside quiet water. At the edge of light. And once it does, once that moment of recognition settles in, the forest never looks quite the same again. Because some legends are not meant to end. They are meant to wait. Just beyond the reach of certainty. Even now, decades after the earliest reports, Fouke remains a place where time feels thinner than elsewhere. People pass through, stop for gas, glance at the tree line, and move on without realizing why their chest feels tight until miles later. Those who stay longer learn quickly that the land does not reward curiosity. It tolerates it, briefly, and then reminds you where you stand. There is a moment most locals recognize. It happens when the forest is quiet enough that your own breathing feels intrusive. When the wind pauses. When even insects seem to listen. That moment is not dramatic, but it is unmistakable. That is when people leave. In the early spring of 2017, a graduate student named Corwin Maddox arrived in the area to research regional folklore. He was methodical, respectful, and convinced that legends gain power through repetition rather than reality. Corwin spent weeks interviewing residents, recording oral histories, noting patterns. What he did not record were his nights. At first, sleep came easily. But by the fourth night, he began waking at the same hour, just before 3 in the morning. No noise woke him. No dream lingered. Just a sudden awareness, sharp and cold, as if something had shifted nearby. On the 7th night, he heard it. Breathing. Not loud. Not threatening. Close enough that he could feel the rhythm more than hear it. Corwin lay still, staring at the ceiling, counting each inhale. He told himself it was his own breath reflected back at him by the quiet. When he finally gathered the courage to turn on the lamp, the sound stopped. Outside, the night resumed as if nothing had happened. Corwin continued his research for another week. He stopped sleeping with the lights off. He avoided late nights. He reassured himself with logic and notes and daylight. Then he found something he had not been looking for. While reviewing old land records at the local library, Corwin noticed gaps. Properties that changed hands repeatedly. Sections of land left undeveloped without explanation. Areas where documentation thinned abruptly, as if people stopped asking questions. Every gap pointed toward the same stretch of forest. The night he decided to visit that area, he told no one. He parked his car just before dusk and followed a narrow path toward Boggy Creek. The air grew cooler with each step. The forest seemed to lean inward, branches overlapping overhead in a way that blocked the last light of the sky. Corwin did not get far. Halfway down the path, he felt it. The same pressure he had felt waking at night. The same awareness. Stronger now. He stopped walking. The forest did not respond. No sound followed. No movement revealed itself. But the stillness felt deliberate, as if the land itself were holding its breath. Corwin turned back. He left Fouke the next morning without finishing his research. His notes were never published. When asked later why he abandoned the project, he struggled to explain. He said the legend did not want to be studied. He said it felt like trespassing. That word unsettled his colleagues more than anything else he said. Trespassing implies ownership. The Fouke monster has never been territorial in a way people expect. It does not mark land. It does not drive intruders away with force. It allows people to enter, briefly, before reminding them that they are visitors. That reminder comes in many forms. A sound behind you where nothing should be. A shape at the edge of vision that vanishes when noticed. A sudden certainty that you are being watched, not hunted. Watched. Over time, some locals come to believe that the creature is less a single being and more a presence that moves through the land. Others insist it is one entity, enduring, patient, unchanged. Both ideas lead to the same conclusion. It is still there. There have been nights when residents swear the forest feels closer than usual. When the tree-line seems to creep nearer roads. When headlights reveal shapes that disappear too quickly to confirm. Those nights are followed by quiet days. No reports. No excitement. Just a shared understanding that something passed through. And passed on. Children raised in Falk learn not to wander too far without being told. They learn to trust discomfort even when it cannot be explained. They learn that courage is not always moving forward. Sometimes, courage is leaving. As this story continues, it may feel as though nothing is happening. No chase. No confrontation. No final revelation. That absence is intentional. Because that is how the Falk monster exists. Not as an event, but as a condition. A quiet pressure on the edge of awareness. A question that never resolves. A presence that does not need validation. Those who demand proof often misunderstand what proof would mean. To prove the Falk monster exists would be to invite it into certainty. And certainty, in this case, may be the only thing keeping it distant. The legend survives because it remains incomplete. Because no one has followed it far enough. Or perhaps because those who have chosen not to speak. There are places near Falk where people still refuse to go alone. Places without signs or fences. Places that feel ordinary until they do not. If you ever find yourself standing at the edge of such a place, if the air grows still and your instincts urge caution, remember that nothing needs to appear for the warning to be real. The Falk monster does not need to show itself to be present. It only needs to be noticed. And once noticed, it remains with you. In the way you listen more closely at night. In the way silence feels heavier than sound. In the way darkness seems deeper than it should be. The story does not end here. It simply returns to where it began. Waiting. In the forest. Long after people stop speaking about it openly, the presence lingers. It settles into routine. Into habit. Into the way doors are locked a little earlier at night and the way windows remain closed even when the air is warm. It becomes part of the unspoken agreement between the land and those who live beside it. Falk does not advertise its silence, but it protects it. In the years following Corwin Maddox's departure, a quiet understanding spread among locals. Outsiders would come, ask questions, look for excitement, then leave disappointed or uneasy. Life would continue. Crops would be planted. Children would grow. Seasons would pass. And somewhere beyond the roads, something would remain unchanged. In the late summer of 2020, during a period when travel slowed and nights felt longer than usual, a delivery driver named Alastair Boone took a route that cut close to the edge of the forest. He was new to the job and unfamiliar with the area. His GPS rerouted him down a narrow road just as dusk faded into full dark. Alastair noticed the quiet immediately. No insects. No wind. No distant engines. His headlights illuminated the road ahead, but the darkness beyond felt dense, almost physical. As he slowed to check his directions, the temperature inside the cab dropped sharply. That was when he heard a sound from the trees. Not a growl. Not a step. A single, slow breath. Alastair froze, hands tight on the steering wheel. The sound came again, closer this time, followed by the faint crunch of leaves. Something large was moving parallel to the road, staying just beyond the reach of the light. He did not open the door. He did not call out. He waited. Minutes passed. The engine idled. His phone screen dimmed, then went dark entirely. The breathing stopped. When the forest finally resumed its quiet rhythm, Alastair drove away without delivering the package. He quit the job the next day. When asked why, he said the route felt wrong. He said it was like being somewhere he was not meant to be. He said nothing about what he heard. Stories like Alastair's rarely make headlines. They are too ordinary. Too restrained. Too subtle to compete with louder legends. But they accumulate quietly, reinforcing the same pattern. The Falk monster does not announce itself. It corrects behavior. That idea has become increasingly common among those who have lived near the forest for generations. The presence is not there to frighten indiscriminately. It appears when people linger too long, push too far, or forget that the land existed long before they did. It is not anger that drives it. It is balance. Some nights, residents claim they can feel when it is close. A weight in the air. A sense of compression. As if the space around them has narrowed slightly. Those nights are spent indoors. Lights are dimmed. Conversations soften. No one needs to say why. Children raised in Fouke learn this without being taught. They sense it in the way adults react. In the way stories trail off instead of ending. In the way certain paths are avoided without explanation. Fear is not always loud enough to name. It can be quiet enough to inherit. As time moves forward, the legend adapts. New language. New technology. Same outcome. Trail cameras fail. Recordings distort. Eyewitnesses doubt themselves. The mystery persists not because it is dramatic, but because it resists being captured. Those who try hardest to prove it often leave the area changed. Less confident. More attentive. They carry something away with them that does not show up in reports or footage. Awareness. That awareness surfaces unexpectedly. In darkened rooms. On empty roads. In the pause between sounds. It does not demand attention. It waits for it. The Fouke monster has never needed belief to survive. It exists whether people speak its name or not. Whether stories are told or forgotten. Whether fear is admitted or dismissed. It does not feed on fear. It feeds on boundaries. And boundaries exist everywhere wildness touches certainty. As this account continues, the absence of resolution becomes its own answer. There is no final sighting that closes the story. No discovery that explains everything. No proof that ends the discussion. Because the Fouke monster does not belong to an ending. It belongs to the spaces in between. Between trees. Between footsteps. Between certainty and doubt. If you ever find yourself near a quiet forest late at night, if you notice the air grow heavy and the darkness deepen without warning, remember that nothing needs to emerge for the warning to be real. Sometimes, the most powerful presence is the one that does not move. Sometimes, being watched is enough. And somewhere, in the stillness beyond Fouke, something continues to breathe. Slowly. Patiently. Waiting for the moment when someone forgets that the land is listening. As seasons turn, the forest absorbs everything. Footsteps fade. Voices disappear. Even memories soften at the edges, unless something gives them weight. In Fouke, that weight never lifts. It presses gently, persistently, like a hand resting on your shoulder long after you have stopped paying attention. People often assume that if something truly dangerous existed, it would escalate. That it would grow bolder. Louder. More violent. But the Fouke monster has never followed that logic. It has remained consistent, which is far more unsettling. Consistency implies control. In the early autumn of 2022, a maintenance crew was sent to repair a series of downed power lines near a wooded corridor outside town. The work was routine. The area was familiar. By sunset, only one technician remained on site, a man named Dorian Fisk, finishing inspections before nightfall. Dorian was experienced. He had worked in harsher conditions than this. Yet as the light faded, he felt a growing reluctance to continue. Not fear exactly. Hesitation. The forest was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. As he checked the final line, Dorian noticed the smell first. Damp earth mixed with something older. Something warm. The hair on his arms lifted before he consciously understood why. Behind him, just beyond the clearing, something exhaled. It was not sudden. It did not startle. It was close enough that Dorian felt the air shift against the back of his neck. He did not turn around. Every instinct told him not to. Instead, he spoke out loud, voice steady but low, saying that he was leaving. The breathing stopped. Dorian packed his tools slowly and walked back to his truck without looking toward the trees. When he reached the road, he glanced into the mirror. At the edge of the clearing, something stood watching him leave. He described it later only as tall and still. He could not recall details. His mind refused to hold them. Dorian requested reassignment the next day. What he experienced was not rare. What makes it unusual is that he spoke aloud. Most people do not. Most people remain silent, frozen by the understanding that sound might change the situation. The Fouke monster seems to respond to intention. When people acknowledge its presence without challenging it, the encounter ends. When people ignore their instincts, linger too long, or attempt to assert control, the forest grows heavier. The silence deepens. The pressure builds. Still, the creature does not advance. It does not need to. There are old journals kept by families who have lived in the area for generations. Not official records. Personal notes. Observations written without expectation of being read. Some of these journals mention nights when the forest felt closer than usual. Nights when sleep was impossible. Nights when animals refused to settle. One entry, written decades ago, describes a night when the writer felt compelled to stand at the window until dawn, convinced that something was standing just beyond the tree line. The writer never saw it. But they knew it was there. That certainty, without confirmation, is what stays with people. It teaches restraint. It teaches respect. It teaches distance. The Fouke monster has shaped behavior more effectively than any warning sign ever could. It has done so without force, without escalation, without needing to reveal itself fully. In doing so, it has become part of the land's language. A pause before entering the woods. A glance over the shoulder. A decision to turn back. Those small choices ripple outward. They keep people safe. They keep the mystery intact. As time moves forward, new generations inherit the same awareness without being told. They feel it in the way stories are told softly. In the way adults fall silent at certain points. In the way questions go unanswered not out of ignorance, but out of understanding. Some things are not explained because explanation invites proximity. And proximity is not always welcome. The Fouke monster does not punish curiosity. It limits it. That distinction matters. Because fear fades. But limits endure. If this story feels unresolved, that is because it is meant to be. There is no conclusion waiting beyond the trees. No final revelation hidden just out of reach. The truth does not sit at the end of a path. It exists alongside it. Walking parallel. Watching. Waiting for moments when people forget how thin the boundary is between certainty and wilderness. And when they remember, when that subtle pressure returns and the forest seems to hold its breath, the lesson is the same as it has always been. Not everything that watches wants to be seen. Not everything that is real leaves proof. And not every presence needs to move to be close. Some simply remain. Breathing softly. In the dark. Where the forest never truly ends. As the story draws to its final moments, the truth about Fouke becomes impossible to ignore. The forest never releases what it accepts. It only allows people to leave with the illusion that they were untouched. Years from now, the roads will still cut through the same stretches of trees. New houses will rise. Old ones will decay. Names will change. Faces will fade. And still, something will remain exactly where it has always been. Listening. On a night when the air feels too heavy and the silence stretches longer than it should, someone will pause at the edge of the woods. They will feel that familiar pressure, that quiet awareness settling over them like a held breath. They will tell themselves it is nothing. Just imagination. Just nerves. That is when the forest will respond. Not with movement. Not with sound. But with closeness. Because the Fouke monster does not chase. It does not reveal itself for spectacle. It waits until certainty slips, until the mind begins to doubt its own instincts. It waits until the person standing there realizes, far too late, that the stillness is not empty. It is occupied. Somewhere just beyond the reach of light, something exhales. Slow. Steady. Patient. The air shifts. The darkness deepens. And in that moment, the boundary people believe protects them no longer feels solid. They will leave, if they are wise. They will never fully explain why they ran, why they avoid forests at night, why silence now feels unbearable. They will carry the awareness with them, quiet and persistent, like a shadow that does not depend on light. And long after their footsteps fade, long after the road grows empty again, the forest will settle back into its rhythm. Unchanged. Because the Fouke monster does not need to be seen to be close. It does not need belief to exist. It only needs one thing. To be remembered. And now that you know its story, now that the silence feels a little heavier than before, the legend does not stay in Fouke anymore. It stays with you. Breathing softly. Just out of sight. Waiting for the moment you forget that you are not alone.